Thank you, Mr. President, and I extend congratulations to representatives from Bahrain, Colombia, Liberia, Latvia, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who have joined the Security Council as elected members and are with us today at the table. We congratulate Somalia on assuming the presidency of the Security Council this month. We thank the Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, Rosemary D. Carlo, for her detailed report on behalf of the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, which she has offered us on the subject that brings us together today, as well as the valuable presentations by Mr. Jeffrey Sachs and Ms. Mercedes de Freitas. In this context, the Republic of Panama refers to the situation that occurred in the territory of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which is worrisome due to its potential impact on regional peace and stability. However, in light of the unfortunate reality of the accomplished facts, it is now necessary to turn our gaze constructively toward the future of Venezuela. However, it is important to note that, as a constant principle of its foreign policy, Panama wishes to reiterate, as it indeed reiterates its unwavering commitment to multilateralism, to the sovereignty of states, and to the unrestricted respect for international law, especially to the principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, including non-intervention, respect for territorial integrity, and the prohibition of the use of force as outlined in Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations. These principles are and continue to be the indispensable framework for peaceful coexistence among nations. Panama also considers it necessary to highlight that the situation in Venezuela is unfolding in an environment marked by the disregard for the will of its people, as well as by a sustained erosion of democratic institutions. In this context, Panama reiterates that it does not recognize nor will it recognize the authoritarian and illegitimate regime that has held Venezuelan men and women hostage, plunged into one of the most severe political, social, economic, humanitarian, and security crises in our region. Unfortunately, we have witnessed how the situation has evolved unfavorably, gradually, under the regime, especially during the last year, with a greater systemic erosion of democracy, the hollowing out of institutions, and the increase of authoritarian and repressive practices that have contributed to an unfortunate outcome. Therefore, they cannot be ignored by the international community either. In particular, it is essential to demand the unconditional release of individuals detained for political reasons, many of them deprived of liberty merely for raising their voices in a context where dissent is not tolerated. From this moment on, it must be demanded that all the political prisoners that the regime holds captive, both Venezuelans and foreigners, must be released without delay. Their integrity and safety must be guaranteed. Likewise, freedom of expression and unequivocal respect for human rights must be immediately ensured in that context. Panama emphasizes that its position does not respond only to a principled democratic solidarity, but also to a direct impact. A Panamanian citizen, Mr. Olmedo Núñez, remains arbitrarily detained in Venezuela, without formal charges, without due process, without full access to defense or effective consular guarantees. To this is added the human impact of a multidimensional crisis that has forced around 9 million Venezuelans to leave their homes, being forced to live in uprootedness and vulnerability as a consequence of the institutional and social collapse generated by the regime. A crisis that has had significant regional repercussions reflected in both the irregular migration flows from south to north of a significant number of Venezuelan people, as well as the reverse migration movements, which also include many Venezuelans, whose effects are particularly felt in the transit and destination countries they impact, including Panama, which has contributed decisively in the fight against illegal migration. In the face of this reality, Panama makes a clear and firm call for the short-term future of Venezuela to be fully democratic. Power emanates from the people, and as His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Panama, José Raúl Mulino, has stated, the people, the true sovereign, have already spoken at the polls, granting an indisputable victory with 70% of the votes on July 28, 2024, to the opposition candidate, Mr. Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, as well as to María Corina Machado, who was the candidate barred by the regime despite having won the primary with 93% of the votes on October 22, 2023. Additionally, the popularity of both has actually increased in recent months, even among police and military sectors. The elected government has the teams and work programs ready to be implemented immediately to ensure an orderly transition that provides the rule of law, respect for human rights and trust. In keeping with this commitment, Panama proudly safeguards the electoral records that convincingly certify this victory as evidence of the inalienable right of the Venezuelan people to decide their own political destiny. Recognizing an authority other than the elected president would be tantamount to legitimizing electoral fraud, normalizing authoritarianism, and undermining the universal principle of free elections as a source of legitimacy. Similarly, any attempt to establish a permanent government headed by figures from the repressive apparatus, like Delcy Rodríguez, would constitute a continuation of the system and not a genuine transition. Any political solution must be peaceful, democratic, and led by the Venezuelans, with the responsible support of the international community, including the United Nations, and regional mechanisms such as the Organization of American States. Panama does not wish and would like to avoid the Venezuelan reality, which might simply evolve into a change of crisis where one crisis replaces another. A genuine transition cannot be spoken of with Maduroism, nor by preserving the same power structures under new names. Any arrangement that keeps figures associated with the repressive apparatus at the helm would, in fact, constitute a continuation of the system and not a transition. Real comparative experience shows that merely nominal transitions tend to prolong conflicts, accentuate migration flows, and perpetuate instability, regional to the detriment of international peace and security. Panama will always stand in solidarity with an orderly and democratic transition process, anchored in the popular will already expressed at the polls on July 28, 2024, aimed at the re-establishment of democratic institutions through an interim period strictly limited in time, whose sole purpose is to create the necessary conditions for the effective exercise of the Venezuelan people's self-determination. As a country that regained its democracy and its sovereignty, Panama clearly states that there can be no peace without legitimacy, nor legitimacy without democracy, and that all democracy ultimately rests on the respect for the popular will. Panama, from its commitment to multilateralism and international law as a member of the Security Council, will continue contributing responsibly to collective efforts aimed at preserving peace, strengthening democracy, and supporting legitimate and sustainable solutions, anchored in the will of the sovereign peoples and in respect for international law. Thank you very much.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.